what I've worked out, this far in the situation. Here you go doubting. So let me remind you again. You know what I'm saying? And so it was right there. It was like the next part. So I'm like, man, I ain't got nothing to lose at this point. Let me watch it. So I watch it. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. I can't remember exactly which one it was. All I know was it was one of them that motivated me to do what it is that I ended up doing. But I think it was Lazy Faith. That's one of the titles too. And there he's talking. He's giving scenarios story in the Bible or whatever, and he's talking. You got to go watch it so I don't misquote and you can see exactly what it is. But either way, it spoke to me in the reverse. He was talking about lazy faith, but it spoke to me in the reverse of like not giving up. Like whatever it is you have to do, you got to fight until the end. You got to work until the end. Like it does not matter what it is that you have to do. Like you have to go to the impossible like it's possible, and you got to keep working. And you gotta, like I said in I think another video we did, like faith without works is dead, right? So I'm like, okay, it's time for me to go to work. Like after I watched this, I sat in the parking lot the whole time, got my daughter straight. She's watching her little video on something, and I sat there and watched the whole part of the series. And afterwards, I felt immediately motivated, or I felt a sense of like, this is not the end. Like this is not the answer. Like this is not the end for us when it comes to this situation. We've come too far. So now I gotta go. Now I gotta go to work. Like I have to go. So I crank up the car. I'm probably about 15 minutes away from my father-in-law's house at the time, because that's where we were staying at. And I started driving straight to the house. And on the way there, I started making phone calls. I prayed first. She still don't know what's going on. She's still at work. Don't know what's going on. I called the first lender. Right? Just trying anything. I called the first lender that declined us. And I said, look, Miss Such and Such, come on, like it's gotta be something that we can do. Maybe we can get a letter from the other lender explaining what happened, like anything. And she's just like, I'm sorry, honey. Like she's like, it's nothing that we can do. She said, I know. She said, I think they've already actually sent you guys the letter. At this point it's above my head and there's nothing that we can do. But like I said before, we can try again in January. I think we were in like November, maybe November. Mm-hmm. She said, we can try again in February, January, February, and see where you are. And maybe that, that can be the time we can do it. And so I'm like, nah, all right, thank you, bye. Like, I wasn't satisfied with the answer because of what I felt, what was in me, what I know God had showed me, what I saw through the series. I'm like, nah, I don't accept that answer. So I'm gonna keep calling. So then I called the neighborhood. I called the builders. I called the builders, and I'm like, look, mind you, through this whole time, the builders have been calling us because we hadn't got our inspection done at this time. Like we had paid for the down payment and for some other type of test, but it was something. But we hadn't done our inspection. So the builder was trying to reach us for us to come do the inspection, but our realtor was like, there's no need for y'all to go do the inspection right now until we figure out what we got. I don't want y'all to waste no money. Like she's thinking like a business person. She's thinking like a realtor. She's like, I don't want y'all to pay any more money and do anything. Like you already got this other money out. And yeah, so just hold off on it or whatever. So they had been calling us to try to come do the inspection. So I had been ducking the phone calls because I'm like, I'm trying to wait to hear from the other lender to see if we're going to be approved. So now at this point, I'm like, I have nothing to lose. Let me call them. So I call the builder. I tell them everything that's going on. It was a nice young lady up at the front that immediately gave me a warm response and said, you know what, Mr. Jeffers, I know at this point you have to be going crazy as a father, as a husband. Let me just try to figure some things out. Don't lose it. Let me just call, some people and see if they have a option for lenders as well. And I'll get back with you, right? So I'm like, okay, thank you. That was the first thing. So now I'm accepting that as like, okay, now I feel comfortable enough to call her, because I'm like, now I got at least something of somebody working on something for us, and it's just not just a dead end. So now I'm feeling comfortable enough to call her. I still haven't called her yet, but even with me feeling comfortable enough to call her, when I got off the phone with her, I still was not satisfied with the answer. I'm like, now I'm gonna have to wait for them. I wasn't satisfied. So I said, you know what? I'm getting ready to call the second lender that denied us. I'm getting ready to call them back. Even though she called me about an hour or so ago, like I'm getting ready to call them back because they got to give me a better answer than this.
Because this wouldn't have happened if y'all had just told us, no, I think it's probably best to go ahead and pay it. Yeah. Because the money was there.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm getting ready to call them back. So In the middle of that, I think I called my father-in-law, and I'm telling him what's going on, and immediately he started praying. Right, he started praying and said some stuff in his prayer that about binding the devil and sending them back to the pits of hell, like all of that, and just it really was like it fueled me up even more. I called my mother, like I called some key people that I knew, and that I knew I needed to start praying for the situation. And so once again, we go back to she still knows nothing, right? So I'm like, all right. So he prayed. I get to the house. I go in and I call the lender back, right? So when I call the second lender that denied us back, I say, look, such and such. I say her name. I'm like, look, such and such. Like, look, you got to give me a better answer than this, because like this is not sitting well with me. It's not right. Like, me and my family in a situation like now because
my
of
man
this.
was working.
Like,
my man was not playing. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, I'm like, yo, this is not gonna work. Like, you have to tell me something else. And she like, Mr. Jeffries, I guess she could hear it in my voice. She like, Mr. Jeffries, I'm just gonna transfer you to my branch manager so you can speak with him. I'm like, cool. That's who I want to talk to anyway. Cool, Mr. Whoever. Like, yeah, let me talk to him. And so she transfers me to him. He gets on the phone. He's like, yes, Mr. Jeffries, what's the situation? What's going on? I'm thinking in my head, like, you know what the situation is. You know who I am, and you know what the situation is.
Because you're the one that declined.
You're the one that declined alone, right?
Yeah, so you know
what's going on. I'm like, yeah. So, okay, well, since you want to play that and you want to hear the whole story, I'll run down the whole story to him.
You leave out
Give
no
him
detail.
no deep. I didn't leave out nothing. The whole story. So I'm like, yeah. I get to the end of the story. He's like, all right, Mr. Jeffries, well, let me ask you this then. He says, did such and such, which was the lady that I spoke to from the original, story or whatever, that told me that we would be okay, that everything would be smooth if we did what we did at the very beginning, and then that told me that I was declined. He says, did she tell you at the beginning that if you didn't make the payment on this date that you would be okay and nothing would happen? I said, well, no, she didn't specifically come out her mouth and say that, but her answer to me was that we would be okay. So then that leads me to believe that
we're going to be okay.
We're going to be okay. She said, yeah, you'll be fine. That's perfect. You can do this. This is the date. So yeah, she led me to believe that we were good. And so he says, all right, okay. Let me just go do some research and I'll call you back. I say, okay, all right. So we get off the phone. Now this was the point that I went and no. I called my father-in-law, and then by the time I got off the phone, he was coming in the house. And so I went out, and he's like, what's going on? So I tell him what's going on or whatever. We sit at the table, whatever. He says another prayer. And we figuring out some other options of things that we can do or whatever if this doesn't work out. And we just, everything is starting to come, it's becoming a little calmer, at this point. Because I'm like, I know that either way, God, the feeling he's putting me about this, it's going to happen one way or another. And so talk to him. By the time I finished talking to him and went back to my phone, it was on the charger, I had a missed call. It was from the bank. So I called the bank back. It was the branch manager. Actually, he left a voicemail. He said, Mr. Jeffries, could you please give me a call back as soon as you just message whatever. So I call him back. He gets on the phone. Whole tone has changed. He's like, Mr. Jeffries, I went and looked at the situation. I talked to such and such. And, just hearing you say, because I told him the whole thing. I said, my daughter has went and picked out her room, my wife. I'm like, we staying with family right now. Like, we basically home. Even though I knew we were not homeless because we were good, we were staying with family. But I'm like, we homeless. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we homeless. Like, we had a situation where we were good. We were moving forward next week. Now this happened, and boom. So he's like, as a man, I can imagine, how you probably feel. And this situation does need to be rectified. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a request up to the creditors to request that the payment be removed off of your credit. He said it shouldn't take that long. They'll remove it, whatever. I'll write it up, we'll send it up, and we'll pull it off your credit. So I'm like, all right, thank God, thank you, guys. I'm happy, whatever, But then I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, if you're gonna remove it off the credit, and that's why y'all denied it, then where we at with being approved by y'all? Then if that's the reason why y'all said y'all denied the loan, He's like, yeah, you're right. He was like, yeah, let's look at it. Let's wait. I'm gonna write the request up. Let's wait for it to be removed. It should take about a week, and then come in next week and sit down with me, and we'll go over everything and figure out what we can do about getting you approved. So I'm like, man, like I'm just at this point, mind you, she still doesn't know anything. Doesn't know nothing. Don't know anything. Know nothing. Right? So now I'm like, man, I can't even explain the feeling that I felt. It was like goosebumps over me, because it was like, man, I had went through this season of my faith, our faith, kind of being, just kind of small and not, as big as we needed to be, and not believing in things like we should or whatever. Still staying with our core and knowing who God is, but just not at the level of faith that we needed to be at. And so now going through this process of this whirlwind and this roller coaster of stuff, now like at the end of it, to get that breath of God being like, see, like it basically was just like, I knew we had to go through all of that just for the purpose of our faith being built back up in the way that it should be built. And I mean, man, like, so yeah, I finally called her and just said, I'm about to take you through a roller coaster of emotions
and I have
within 5 minutes, but just keep your cool, because it has a great ending. So just chill, just chill. So I tell her the whole story in about 5 minutes and everything that happened, whatever. But at the end of that story, God had something worked out for us that I didn't have to make that phone call to say that it's just over with and we're done and we gotta wait the next year. God worked it out. Yes. He worked it out.
He used you.
Yeah,
to work it out.
I mean,
my baby went to work. I'm so grateful to have a husband like you that can work it out, because that phone call could have been very different.
Yeah.
When you called me, because when he first started out telling me what's going on, I'm already upset. I'm teary eyed. I'm crying, and then he going through blah blah, and then at the end he's like, "But this is what happened. We worked it out. We're just waiting on him to give us a call back. Once the stuff comes off the credit." So that was like a big relief. Yeah, but God I feel like we had to go through that whole thing, because I felt like we would have got to the end of it so fast. Remember I said at the beginning of this process, everything was smooth, it was easy. Fast. And I feel like if it would have went through like that, then we would have thought that this blessing happened because of us. Directly because of us and because of something great we did, right? Yeah, we always know that God had something to do with it, but we wouldn't have been as grateful.
We wouldn't have been as grateful. We wouldn't have even been sharing a story like this. It just wouldn't have been the same impact as if if it was all easy and smooth or whatever. But it's like he had to bring us back to like, look, I am who I am, and hey, just remember that, and I do remember that. Like I said, But anyway, back to the story. So at this point now we have 2 lenders, and then we had 26 minutes. So I don't want to go too much further. But at this point we have 2 lenders, right? We remember builders, and they were working on something for us, and now we have this. But the deal with the lender ended up being so much better than anything that even the first lender. They were able to take our loan at the exact cost that we needed. It wasn't like we had to come up with that extra money. It just was, everything worked out like it should have been from the start. Like it just worked out. And so we were able to go with the lender. When I came in to bring in the paperwork, to sign everything, for us to be able to move forward, it was easy. They came in, they knew who I was. They like, here you go, Mr. Here you go, boom, boom. We signed everything we had to sign. And boom, we move forward with making the purchase of our first home.
Yes. A week before Christmas?
A week before Christmas. Because they had to push
Happy Friday the 13th, guys. We were just coming to let you know that we're homeowners.
Push our closing date back. So remember,
we had to get a second inspection. Mm-hmm. It was radon test. I said iodine earlier. That
we had to go back and do. We had to do all of that, but they had to push. They had to push our closing date back.
Yep.
Because we couldn't do that a week after, because it was just too much paperwork and too many things they had to do. So she said, "Hey, if they'll hold on, if the builders will wait, we'll be able to approve this in probably about 3 weeks." And then we'll go from there. That'll be the fastest I can push it. And so we called the builders. The builders were like, hey, they didn't want to move forward with nobody or start the whole process over with anybody else. So they were more than willing to wait as long as they knew we had something. And the builders, 3 weeks happened. Everything was good. We got approved.
Yeah,
came down
and we moved in. We
in
had our
home.
first Christmas with no furniture.
We had our first Christmas.
Our
no
Christmas tree was
furniture,
leaned up against a corner.
Christmas tree, happy as I don't know what.
Yeah,
Didn't matter.
we had the best Christmas ever.
Yeah. Our first home. So yeah.
So that's it. That's our testimony. A lot of ups and downs, like roller coaster of emotions. Just standing on faith. Definitely. So I hope this blesses somebody. If you're going through something, anything, not just purchasing a home, but just anything, just always remember that God is always there. You can always lean on Him.
Yeah. And this is coming from a young couple who, you know, we don't have everything right. We're not perfect by any means, right? But when you recognize real and you know where the core of your faith has come from as growing up or whatever, and you see something like this powerful happen, it's just a reminder of like, okay, I know exactly where this is coming from and what this is, and and I promised God, like after this whole situation, I promised Him, I said how many people I can tell this story to, I'm gonna tell it to them. And it's funny that it worked out this way, and now I'm on like a platform like YouTube that millions of people are able to see this or whatever. So I just wanted to make sure we kept that promise, because I said, I'll tell everybody. I don't care who I come across. I tell my friends, my anybody, co-workers, anybody I could tell this story to. I said, I promised God that I would tell this to anybody, because if it can bless somebody else and move somebody else forward, and that's what it was all about. So thank you.
Well, I hope y'all enjoyed this story. I hope it blesses you. I hope you tell everybody. Don't forget to go watch Crazy Faith.
That's right.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please comment below also. And then our next video, we're probably gonna be bringing in another couple.
Yeah.
So
we have some couple conversations.
Yeah. So y'all let us know like some questions. You can comment. You can inbox me on Facebook. Anything like that. Just let us know some questions that you would like to be answered, and then we're just gonna kind of have like a little round table. So I hope you enjoyed. We will see y'all later.
All right. Thank you guys.